Recording to the cloud always sounds so poetic in a way, doesn't it? All right, now I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And hello and good evening. I am so glad that you're here. I'm so grateful that you're willing to spend an hour with me talking about a topic that a lot of us, frankly, don't love chatting about, which is really advanced care planning, what it is, and why you need to do it. Um, and just before we get started, what I would really like to do is just kind of a quick check in, which is answering this question. That, not to put anyone on the spot, but you see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take questions at the end rather than as we go, and I'm going to prioritize the questions that are in the chat. So, my sneaky thought is if you answer this question in the chat, then I'll know that you know how to use the chat. And if questions come for you as we're going through, you'll be able to store them in the chat box, and then I'll be able to answer them in the end at the end. So this check-in is just simply, what is a word or a phrase that you think of when you think of advanced care planning? One of the words that comes to me is overwhelm. Daunting. Yes. Hard work. Making life, I love that, Esther, the positive of it as well. Yes. Death. Very to the point, Hiromi. Very nice. And important. Yes. Yes. Couldn't agree more. That is so it. So we're going to talk about holistic advanced care planning, which encompasses all of those things that you talked about. And as we go tonight, if you have questions, just do what you've just done. Pop them in the chat at the end. I promise, even though I talk way too much, I promise that I'll have time at the end to answer most of your questions, if not all, as we go. And because I've got this big screen up, I can't really see you. You're in little boxes on the side here. And so if you desperately need to get me, we're not a huge group, just unmute and speak up, and I'll be able to make sure that I don't miss anything important then, okay? So I want you to be really upfront about this. This is an informational webinar, and I've told you that I want to tell you about the fact that I want you to join me in prep school, and I promised you that there would be no hard sell. So rather than do that thing that people do where they get you all the way through and then at the end they say, "Oh my gosh, but wait, there's more," which just makes me want to wash. I just want to get this out of the way at the very beginning, and I'm only going to take a minute to do it. My prep school program is $350 plus GST. Anyone who comes tonight receives a discount, $25 with a code webinar fun, $25 off that price. The cost is reflective of the years of work that I have put into creating this course and the experience that I know you will have in it. Couples or anyone coming with more than one person, so it can just be friends, will get a slightly larger discount. You'll use more, and then you'll get 15% off if you're registering more than one person in the class. Every single cohort has space for anyone who needs this work but can't afford it. Every single cohort. And I can always make a special zero interest payment plan just for you. Um, if you know that you can do this, but you just can't do it all at once. You know that small businesses deserve to be supported, but you also can't always shop at the farmer's market, right? I get that. So all you have to do is ask if that's something that you fall into. The class includes the proven benefits of small group learning. Weekly live classes, nothing is canned, but everything is recorded. So if you have to miss a class, you can always just catch it on the replay. And you're going to get a learning hub where all the program material lives week by week. And that includes a 90-page workbook. Actually, it's 90 plus pages nowadays, and unlimited access to the office hours that I put on every single week. These are just a live drop-in session with me. It's kind of an Ask Me Anything. And it allows us, because in group work, we can't necessarily do, like, we can't get into your specific problem in class, but or situation maybe, but we can do it in office hours. And those are ongoing. I still had office hours this morning from cohorts that have been like with me in the past. Those just go on all year long. Also, really, I hold your hand at every single step of this project, and I will gently harass you, hound you, until you're completely done. So that's it. That's the hard sell. That's all I'm going to say. I'll remind you of those codes at the end if you're interested. And no matter what, you're going to learn something tonight. So let's go on. This is me, different pair of glasses. If you join class, you'll also see all of my glasses. I would like to begin with just a brief land acknowledgement. I am so grateful to be here on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people. This is a hugely important trading route, and it was and is the home of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam peoples, and probably many more because of the importance of these trading routes. I am honored to be an uninvited guest in this beautiful corner of the world. And I'm honored to continue to learn from traditions other than my own when it comes to end of life care and after death care. So, with that, who am I? I'm a funeral director. I'm an end of life doula. I'm an educator, and I'm the founder of Death's Apprentice Education and Planning. I used to have a column on CBC Radio, and I'm pretty active on Instagram. So if you don't follow me there, you might like to. It's just deathsapprentice.ca. I use really plain language, and I've created a practical program to help guide people through the integrated process of holistic advanced care planning. And I do this because the mess that gets left behind when people aren't prepared, it creates pain, and it creates chaos, and it compounds grief. And I've witnessed this over and over again. And if I can help one person not to have to face that strain, then I'll be happy. But I'm going to know that I've really kind of done my work when no one has to face the inevitable unprepared. I think I've got a long way to go before I retire, boy, because people do not like talking about this. So I sometimes joke that I have a really Canadian introduction. We frame it as what we are not, and I think that's the truth in my line of work as well. Death and end of life and aging and illness and incapacity, all of that intersects with our lives, our rich, complex lives. And so you need to know that I'm not a tax expert, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a counselor. I'm not even an event planner, to tell the truth. But what I am is someone who can help you plan for illness, aging, frailty, incapacity, and even the end of your life, and after the end of your life, because I am a licensed funeral director, and I have sat with people over and over and over on the hardest day of their lives. And I've realized that we need to do this differently, and we need to do this in advance. I have specific expertise in what it means to truly have your affairs in order. All right. So why am I so laser focused on this topic? Pretty much what we've got going on here is a silver tsunami. The boomers, God bless them, but they're aging. And just like they've impacted everything that they touch at every point in their lives, they're going to impact this part of their lives too, which is the end of their lives. And this is what it's going to look like. We are not going to be ready. I really genuinely believe that we need to take a societal approach to the issues around advanced care planning, but we're not doing that yet societally. So it really means that we have to do it individually, because about, I don't know, 6 years ago, let's say 6 years ago, around 15% of Canadians were over 65. And by 2030, which is 6 years away, that number is going to double. It's going to be nearly 30% of Canadians who are going to be over 65. And the impact of that on our strained systems, the ramifications of that population boom finally going silent, they're profound. We will need to be prepared in all sorts of practical ways on a societal level. And I don't think we will be. So what this means is that your individual responsibility is going to be so wildly important. And you've already told me you know that this is hard. It's easy to avoid this work. It can feel daunting. It can feel overwhelming. And that's why prep school is what I want us to do together, or some semblance of it together. So if here's what you need to do. This is what holistic advanced care planning looks like. Everybody wants a checklist. Here's your checklist, friends. Planning for major transitions, right? So elements of aging that might involve moving out of a home, for example, or downsizing, or moving into care, or having a sudden serious illness or whatnot. Planning for major transitions, or even planning for the actual end of life. It's overwhelming, it's scary, it can be a fractured process, and it's easy to put off, but procrastination leads to chaos. And so I want you to kind of know that we can do this together. We can actually put this together holistically if we're brave and if we're honest and if we really, really have a desire to be ready. And we need to do that in order to get ready. We need to stop looking at the planning process like this. This darn checklist is actually not going to help us, because we actually need to look at it as something that's connected and integrated. There are separate pieces to this work, and these are the 4 pillars. I'll go into them in detail for you: legal, administrative, financial, medical, philosophical decision making, disposition and ceremony planning, and your legacy work, the most important work. They all do stand on their own, but actually you often can't do one without at least reflecting on elements of the other. So I don't approach this like a list. I approach it more like this, right? This interconnected system. We start in one spot, which in my program happens to be with the legal, administrative, financial pillar, but we go through all of them and we kind of dip in and out. So let me take you through them, okay? So the legal, administrative, and financial documentation that you need to have in place, this is what most people think of when they hear the phrase, get your affairs in order. And in a lot of ways, this is actually the easiest part of the work. And yet, so few people do it. Do you know only 40% of Canadians have a will? And of that number, only 10% are sure that it's up to date. That is a shockingly small number, right? And even if you're feeling pretty smug about having this part of the work done, which is quite common, especially in certain age groups and in certain socioeconomic like demographics, sometimes what happens, like in really highly educated groups or relatively wealthy groups, it's still important to revisit the documentation. Sometimes people have really old documents or documents from another jurisdiction. Sometimes they don't really know what their documents actually say. Sometimes they don't know which documents they have. So even if you're feeling pretty good, I want you to like revisit in a minute, or not in a minute, but in the coming days, weeks ahead. Last month, actually, I was giving another presentation, and there was fairly elder, like an older crowd, 75% of the people in the room, there were 50 people in the room. They said that they had a will. And I was like, oh, okay, that's higher than the national average. So then I thought, so of you people with the hands up, how many know that it's up to date? And like a few hands went down. And then I was like, okay, sure. So can you go find your wills and report back to me? And of that group, when I met them the next week, 8 people said that there were that they knew where their wills were. And of that, 2 people couldn't find them at all. Right. So we had some people who went back and said, well, they weren't where I thought they weren't. It took me much longer to find it. We had and then people who couldn't even find it at all. But even if you have your will, even if it's up to date, you probably don't. You're also going to need someone to speak on your behalf for legal and financial matters. That is your power. That's called an attorney. That is not a lawyer, can be, but it does not have to be a lawyer. It can be a little confusing, but the document that we name somebody in is called a power of attorney. We need to ensure that we have given someone the enduring power of attorney so that should anything ever happen to us and we become incapacitated, they can speak on our behalf for legal and financial matters. This is a relatively simple document to create, and there are no in BC, you don't even need to have it notarized, although sometimes banks and other financial institutions will want a notarized copy, although by law you don't have to. So if you get your elbows out and you want to be assertive, you can kind of say, oh, I know my rights and I don't have to, but often it's easier just to go ahead and get that piece done. So this is if you are alive but incapacitated, unable to speak for yourself. An enduring power of attorney endures into incapacity and allows someone else to speak on your behalf for legal and financial matters. And you might think to yourself, well, I'm not that fancy. I don't have big things and a house and I don't really have a bunch of stuff that people are going to need to speak on my behalf about. I have a pretty small bank account or whatnot. I cannot stress this enough. You need this document, an enduring power of attorney, because without it, there is no one in our system who can be that person for you. With the other 2 documents that I'll talk about in a moment, we do have substitutes there. It's costly to bring them in. It can be a real legal hassle, but they at least exist. A lot of people think, oh, my spouse will do this for me. Nope. If you have joint accounts for everything, yes, okay. But you don't have joint accounts for everything. You have a cell phone in your own name, or you've signed up for a Costco card in your own name. None of that stuff can be dealt with. Changing your address at the post office because you've moved from one place to a care home can't be done without an enduring power of attorney in place. So that's the second document that you need. Most folks don't have those. The third document that you need is actually, I'm just scanning right now. Friends, are we all in BC tonight? Give me a little nod or, yeah, okay, the people I can see are in BC. Lovely. So, and that's quite typical. I generally have BC, Alberta, and sometimes the Western states that come to my classes. In BC, the document that names somebody to speak on your behalf for medical matters is actually another document. That's called a representation agreement, Section 9. So you need this as well as the will and as well as the power of attorney. And most people find that they might have one, or more than likely, they've had some intention of getting one or maybe a couple of these documents in place for a very long time. So when in our medical system, we need to have someone who can speak on our behalf if we cannot speak for ourselves. And fully 75% of people admitted to hospitals are admitted in a state where they cannot answer questions reliably for themselves. So this is really important. And I'm going to speak more specifically about that document so that I can really help you understand the interconnectedness of holistic advanced care planning in a second. The other piece that I need you that I'd really like you to consider having in place would be what are called letters of instruction. And these letters of instruction, they're not legally binding, but they're incredibly powerful documents that we can create to help people understand the intention behind the legalese that is often so pervasive in these legal documents, right? Folks think they have this all figured out, but our legal documents, if we do have them, they can also often lead to a false sense of security. Let me explain what I mean by that by talking actually about the medical and philosophical decision making piece. All right. This work is so interconnected. And one of the documents that you need is a legally binding document. It's going to name someone who in BC is called a representative. It's your representation agreement, section 9. This person can speak for you on medical matters if you can't make your own wishes known. The legal document, the representation agreement, section 9, is very simple. And there are actually several ways to complete this document, many of which are completely free. You don't need a lawyer or a notary to do this. You can, however, use a lawyer or a notary or an online platform or one. But just filling out this paperwork doesn't actually help your representatives speak for you, because you need to go deeper and you need to reflect on some important questions that a lawyer or a notary are not going to ask of you. What a lawyer or a notary is likely to do, they're likely to insert, for lack of a better word, really boilerplate language that will be little help to physicians or to your representatives when big, important, and sudden decisions need to be made. And in prep school, we actually take 2 weeks to help you articulate your wishes for both end of life care and care in the case of sudden, serious, but maybe not life-threatening illness. And that is going to help the person that you appoint speak on your behalf with confidence. Because we don't just need to know who we should appoint into this role. We need to be sure that they know what to say, that they understand our beliefs and values. I will give you an example about a medical document. I'm sorry, about a legal document, the representation agreement, section 9, giving false sense of security, that really came from a very personal experience of mine. My mother several years ago had a bad fall and broke her hip. And as you know, octogenarians breaking their hips can be really, really bad. Mom also had dementia. We were sort of in the earlier stages, not at the very beginning, but we were definitely in the earlier stages. And we realized at that point, and this was a number of years ago, so I wasn't really to blame because I wasn't in this line of work at the time, but we pulled out her fancy representation agreement. Well, like, for sure we're going to get some detail about what she would want, because we had to answer questions about things like inserting pacemakers so that she could survive the surgery that was going to replace the hip. Replacing the hip was absolutely not going to kill her. Not replacing the hip, but fixing the hip. She was not going to die from that. She was nowhere near death. But was she going to be able to withstand the surgery with her heart in the current situation that it was? We looked to her documents that were carefully crafted by an expensive lawyer, and all we had was boilerplate language that said, if I am close to death, don't use machines to keep me alive. Well, that's helpful, thanks. What we had was 7-8 weeks of decisions that needed to be made, and no direction to do it. So I know from a very personal perspective of what I speak. But what's really important is not just who are you going to appoint, but what will they say? And what will they say when you are at the end of your life and we know that death is near and certain? What will they say when you're, I don't know, strolling along? Rayanne's out for a walk one day and then she's like, you know what, I'm going to go skiing tonight and do some like grouse night skiing, and has a terrible accident, but it's nowhere near death. However, she's admitted in a state that absolutely does not allow her to speak on her own behalf. Decisions will need to be made rapidly, and they will all have risk associated with them. What risk is Rayanne willing to take in that circumstance, right? We need to think about these things, and we need to empower the people who we ask to do this work for us. We need to empower them, right? So after we spend a couple of weeks looking in detail at those questions, we finally get to put the fun in funeral. Okay, sorry, I'm a funeral director. You have to know how painful that is for me. But here's another way that we can actually see how interconnected the planning work is. A lot of people think of this part, the disposition, so burial or cremation, and ceremony, what happens after you die, as the ultimate part of being ready. And some folks, the 40% of Canadians who have a will, a lot of people will, in their will, they will say, oh, I want to be cremated or bury me. That's a very common thing. It's also a crazy place to put that instruction. You know why? Because the will won't even be read, probably until after you're cremated. And let me tell you, you can unbury somebody, but you cannot uncremate them. So this is not a great place to put this information. And usually when we do say things, I hear this all the time, oh, my dad's all organized, he's prepaid for his cremation. That's great, and I applaud him for doing that. But that is literally one choice, burial or cremation. There are so many more choices than just cremation or burial that need to be made. But all that we normally note in our will is burial or cremation. It's not helpful. It can actually, once again, it can lead to this false sense of security. And as a funeral director, I'm here to tell you the average arrangement after, that's what they're called, a meeting after the death occurs, and the arrangement takes 2 hours usually. And there's, I don't know, let's say 84,322 questions that need to be answered at that point. And even when all you want is a simple cremation, simple to you and simple to me and simple to your mother and simple to your sister and simple to your partner, they might all mean very, very different things. And so your funeral director at this point, they're truly obligated to kind of walk you through the decisions that need to be made. And no one should have to make these decisions while they're grieving. It's a terrible idea. So thinking about and talking about and planning and preparing for your own memorialization, it can seem, to some people, it can seem kind of morbid, or I often hear, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll be dead, but people think it's self-centered, but it's not. It actually provides such clarity for the people you love and the people who are going to be dealing with the fact that you are no longer part of their lives. It's not self-centered. And really, if we can just kind of get our heads around the fact that death is just part of life, even though we've become so disconnected from it, it makes sense to put the same kind of planning into this as you would put into really any other major life event. And it's so much more than just cremation or burial. Disposition here in BC, especially, we only have burial or flame-based cremation. In other parts of the world, we have a lot more options, natural organic reduction, human composting, or liquid cremation, alkaline hydrolysis, that kind of thing. We don't have that here. But we can still make a lot of choices to make things greener, for example. We can still have so many choices around our ceremony that we can create things that don't necessarily look like a funeral, like with those awful egg salad sandwiches and stuff in a church basement. Doesn't have to look like that, but it also doesn't have to, and you don't have to go through it at the time that you're asked to make these decisions, right? I want you to do this and learn about it from someone like me who is not trying to sell you an expensive casket, right? I don't want you to make these decisions while you're grieving, because this is a really, really, really bad idea. After the fun, the enormous fun of planning your own funeral, we will also talk and touch in on the most important thing, the legacy work. And I don't know if we should start or end really with this part of the puzzle. In prep school, we end with it because honestly, I do find sometimes people can't even really get started unless they do some of this meaningful work. But a lot of times people need to kind of warm up by doing some task-oriented things in order to be able to unlock this piece. And so this pillar is something that I see constantly overlooked in traditional advanced planning work. I wonder if I have it here. Just one sec. There's a booklet that here it is. Yes, I was actually showing someone who's on the call today this booklet, which is from British Columbia. It's called My Voice. It's a yellow book that the government of BC puts out, and I have so many people who I work with who have this book free, unfinished on their shelves because they don't get it. They don't understand it. It's all too much, and it's written by a government group, right? And it asks us enormous questions, but it doesn't give us any framework to think about legacy. And that just doesn't allow us to kind of get into the bigger part of the work. So what I do all the way through is I weave in questions about your beliefs and values, what matters most to you, so that by the time we get to what I truly believe is the most important paperwork, you've been softened up and you're ready for this work. And in holistic advanced care planning, we'll take time to think about who we would want to leave lasting messages for and what they might say, right? Legacy projects, they don't have to be hyper produced and Pinterest worthy, they can actually be handwritten notes on a set of dollar store cards, to be perfectly honest. And something, getting it written rather than getting it right is enormously important. So here's my question, right? If you if you want to get this done, if it's time to get this work done, or even if you don't want to get it done, but you know that you should, then this would be a wonderful time to join a lovely, intimate group and to get holistic planning done and done right. I want you to have a clear picture of what lies ahead, and I want to have time for questions, etc., because I believe I've got a couple already. I want to make sure that it's not just me yapping at you for the whole time. But I really want you to understand that there is not an easy way to do this, but doing it is actually really enriching, and it's kind of curiously enlivening. What happens when we die, it's not actually a mystery. It's entirely predictable, and it is something that we can plan for. So I would like to help you with that. I want to remind you that I have a spot available in every session for a self-identifying scholarship student, and I can create individual payment plans if you need that. Everyone is welcome to have the $25 off with webinar fun, and take this, maybe do a screenshot or take a picture of this. I am going to send you out this slide deck as well, so don't fret. But that is how you reach me. hello@deafsapprentice.ca is my email. There's my telephone number, although I'm going to be in the States for a few days, so don't call me while I'm down there. And that is the link for the prep school program. I'm going to stop the share. There you are. And I'm going to put you back into my favorite view there. I don't know if I'm looking proper to you, but now you're all around me, which is very lovely. Let me go back to the chats. And please, especially because we are a smallish group. Yes, okay, terrific, Esther. Because we're in a smaller group, I'll answer Esther's question, but then don't feel you have to use the chat. I wanted to make sure that you didn't lose track of any questions, but you're most welcome to unmute and just speak up, okay? So some of the types of questions funeral directors ask regarding dispositions. I know there are other types of disposition like acclamation, etc. Do you know, when I say the 83,472 questions that get asked, I'm barely exaggerating. Think of somebody saying, okay, my dad wants a simple cremation, for example, right? Okay, that's terrific. Well, when we pick dad up from wherever he dies, are you going to be present at that time? Would you like to help move him onto the trolley as he gets wheeled away? Will you provide clothing that you'd like us to change him into? Would you like him to just be in if he was in a hospital, he'll be in a hospital gown, and he'll probably still have tubes and stuff up inside him. Would you like to have any sort of visitation or viewing where you spend a little bit of time with him? Perhaps you were all present when he died, and everybody feels very complete, and that doesn't seem like a necessary step. Maybe you weren't able to be there, and there's people in the family who are like, gosh, I would just love the chance to see my dad one more time. Where should we do that? How long should we take to do that? What will dad be wearing? Will dad be in a casket, or will he be on a table? It's called a table viewing. Will he, now, no funeral director, I mean, it would be an absolutely terrible funeral director that would rattle it off like that, but those are the types of questions that we need to get to the bottom of. Because if we just say, okay, we'll be there in 15 minutes, pick him up, bye, we'll bring him back from the crematorium 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks later you find out that all of these things could have been options that would have been helpful to your healing process, you're going to be mad, right? And then, so we haven't even gotten him to the crematorium yet. When we take him to the crematorium, should we take him in a hearse, or should we take him in a utility vehicle? Would you like to be present at the crematorium to witness the beginning of the cremation? Would you, when you get the cremated remains back, should dad's cremated remains be separated, or would that be antithetical for him? Would he want them all together? Ceremony. Let's talk about service and ceremony, right? And so, does that give you a sense, Esther? I think it seems challenging. Yes. Oh my God, Esther. Here's the other thing. Seems challenging. Yeah, it is the worst part of being a funeral director, sitting there across from somebody who is having literally the worst day of their lives. Like the worst, something bad has happened, right? Because they've lost somebody that they love, most likely. And, or gosh, it can be even worse if it's a complicated relationship, right? They've lost somebody that they've not finished something with, and now they're grieving, and it's a complicated grief, right? Whew, that can be even worse. But then, you know what else kind of questions that I'm going to make sure you have written down? Did you know that when somebody dies, you're going to be asked, what was their mother's maiden name? The person who died, what was their mother's maiden name, and where was that person born? Like, you're grieving. Do you really want to do you like you have to go phone Auntie Linda now and be like, well, like it's a hassle, right? So I will take you through the practical things like that, but I'll also take you through the emotional as well. Uh, well, I mean, Esther in the chat says, I wonder why these questions can't be added to an advance directive. So an advance directive is actually a legal document that answers a very specific question. In this specific medical circumstance, do this. That's what an advance directive is. So that's why we wouldn't put that in, that's why we wouldn't put it in an advance directive. It's a very specific legal document. But if you mean like a more generic advanced plan, absolutely, that's what prep school is. That's what we will do in that pillar together, so that those answers are all ready for the person that you love to just be, or the people that you love. All right. Unmute, my friends. It's weird when everybody's just so yes. Okay, Rayanne. Wait, I can't hear you. Ask to unmute. There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Sorry about that. My husband and I need to update our will. Our son's now 23 and doesn't need a guardian. And is it better to do the will first, or look at doing the advanced planning, all that first?
Okay, it sounds sort of chicken and eggy, but I truly believe that it needs to be done integrated. That I truly believe that it needs to be done kind of, you need to, the best case I believe is to go through and kind of make your decisions. You're in a great position because you're like, oh, I've already got a will. I know what it entailed last time. I know what I need to change, right? Sometimes people are in circumstances where they're like, I've never done this, and I don't even know who to pick to be my cat's guardian, much less my child's guardian or whatnot. And so what I typically encourage is to get the people in place that you want to act as executor or guardian or da 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 da. Don't need that anymore, but you know what I mean. Get a rough sense that we can put into our letters of instruction so that we can keep our wills very high level and legally binding and keep them kind of future proofed. But then we can have letters of instruction that can be changed just at will, if you will. And then reflect on these other questions and tie those things up, because as you're going along, for example, during the disposition, when you're thinking through disposition and ceremony, what we should do with your body after you're dead and how we should ceremonialize you, one of the things to reflect on is, gosh, would I want to leave a scholarship, an access scholarship for somebody? Would I want to get a hospital wing named after me? If yes, and you've already finished your will, then you're going to have to go back and redo your will. Right? You get it?
Okay. Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. No, that's good. Thank you
for that. I love that question. Terrell, did you have a question?
No, I don't think I do at the moment.
Oh, okay. About my love. I will say, I'm a licensed funeral director, and I know what uncomfortable silences can be like. So.
Hi, Krista. I'm going to head off now. I'm going to leave, but thank you. I wanted an update, a refresher, I guess, for all of this. I'm going to be making some changes to my will, and I want to send this recording. I don't know if we can do that. Send it on to a few people that are going through.
Absolutely, my darling. Absolutely. And Kim, so Kim's an alumni. Kim, you can come to office hours anytime. I'll send you a quick email. And then if you just want some one-on-one with me, we'll do that.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay.
Everybody, I highly recommend working with Krista. She is awesome. And it was really easy to go through. A lot of tough questions, but it was great.
Oh my gosh, Kim, thank you a million. You can definitely come back to office hours. Yeah.
Everyone,
Thanks, my love.
gonna
See you
head off.
later.
Bye-bye.
And friends, my hope was to make sure that we were done by 8, but that definitely does, if you wish. It gives you a bit of time to get into the weeds, and if people just want to sort of fly off into the evening, that's okay too. Totally okay.
It's giving me a new perspective on all. My parents are both alive. My husband's parents are both alive, but they're all in their mid to late 80s.
Yes.
And my dad's will kit that he did by himself is really now worrying me.
You know, those will kits are a challenge. Something that I really strongly recommend, and this happens all the time when people take the course. They often they say things like, I'd like my husband to do it, or I'd like a friend or whatever. And I usually just say, just do it yourself. You'll get great at it. You'll understand what needs to be done. And then if you need a little refresher with me, or if you want to send somebody to me for a short period of time or something like that, I can help with that. It's really enriching when couples do it together. I hear this all the time. People are like, it's like marriage therapy, but the really good kind. Like, you're not coming for a problem, but people are like learning about each other, things that they didn't even ever think to ask each other, right? But sometimes it can be hard to get everybody together. So just do it. And then you'll be like, okay, now I know what to do. Especially, oh my God, I had this woman who I adore. She's actually a mentor of mine. She did this work with me. And that was back when I did just individual work. And then I developed prep school. And then I eventually stopped doing individual work because it's so rich to have people learning with and from each other. But I did it sort of 2-on-1 with her. And she said, oh yeah, no, we got all that paperwork done, the will stuff, no problem. We don't even need to deal with that work. And I said, okay, well, just bring it to me and I'll just have a quick look. I was like scanning, and this is all professionally done, lawyers that cost thousands of dollars, right? Scan through it. And I'm like, do you know that you have, we also were looking at her parents' stuff, and her parents, I was like, do you know that they have named all 3 children to act as executors at the same time? Not separately, but jointly. Do you know that that's what's going to happen when they die? All 3 of you, 2 of whom are in different parts of the province, are going to have to be in the same room at the same time. And she was just like, well, you have just saved us hours and so much money as well, because how could we even do that, right? And then with hers, I was like, you know, well, there were a few things that I was just like, okay, sweetie, I don't know how fast the lawyer was going, but do you even know what this line means? And she was like, no, because we get that way, right? With doctors and lawyers, we're like, oh, you're the expert, and we back up a little bit. So no, you figure out what you need, and then you'll be an expert, and you can teach the course after that.
Yeah. No.
Terrible business model, actually, but no,
It works.
It works for me. To answer Esther's question, prep school starts on April 17th, which is next Wednesday. I typically say there's 5 classes, and I typically say as long as you can be there for 3 or more, this is the cohort that you should be in. If you can come to all 5, that's great. If you think you'd be away for more than 3 of the sessions, or three or more of the sessions that you wouldn't be able to attend, then wait for the next one. I do have others. I'll do, I think, 2 more, one short, intense one that's called a boot camp that will occur on a weekend. It has its own special joy. There really is something special about it, but it is very intense and it moves very quickly, and you will not be done after the 2 days. You will not be done. I need to make that very, very clear. However, it'll probably take you about the 5 weeks that it would take you if you were doing the weekly program. For people doing the weekly program, typically between 2 and 4 weeks after the last class is when people wrap up. And I ensure that you tell me what your due date is, and then I track that for you. And if you need help through that time, you come to office hours, you send me an email, maybe you move your due date but I will kind of keep you guided. Occasionally, in the very old days, I used to say, come back anytime, no charge. Now I say, you can come back to a class or two, but not the whole program. If you have to come back to the whole program because you just were lazy, then you have to pay half price. But and occasionally people do have to do that, but 90+% of people just they get through it, and they see, they're like, okay, fine. The other thing is, you're gonna hear me say this all the time if you come to class, which is something is better than nothing in all of this work. And the word that a few of us used at the beginning, that daunted or overwhelmed, that is something that I hear all the time. And the reason that it is daunting or overwhelming, because some of you might have books on your shelves that are like, here's your executor toolkit, and it's this long, and it's 72 pages of checklists and nonsense. Yeah, that's daunting, and you're not going to get that done. Ultimately, though, especially with password keepers and other things that are really quite simple, that's not the work that we need to do. You will do that. You'll do that on your own time, but you'll do this other way more important work as well. So that's where you are. Now, beloved, it's oh yes, it is Rayanne. It is each Wednesday, and I will send a follow-up email so that if you don't remember this, it's 7:15 p.m. until 8:30. I'm just putting that in the chat, for 5 weeks. And like I say, office hours are just truly ongoing. You can have those for as long as you need. Classes are recorded. I keep the recordings for a week. I'm going to send this recording to you, and if you want it, you'll download it within like 5 days. And if not, it will go away, and you won't be able to have it. But you're welcome to share this with anybody. I'm relatively generous with my time. I really, really want people to sort of know what they're getting into, to know what I can do and what I can't do. People who want the 77 pages of checklists, I can send you to other places, good places, but just not my place, right? So, okay, now beloveds, 2 minutes to go. Before I let you go, please take yourself off mute. And what I would love, because it's just so weird being, we all got used to it in COVID, but still, like, just hearing people is so nice. What I would love you to do at the beginning, I asked you to just give me a word that you think of when you think of advanced care planning, holistic advanced care planning. What I would like you to do
Any indication
now.
desire to attend or no?
Oh, somebody better just, there we go. What I would love you to do is just pop in the chat. Don't press enter yet. Don't press enter. Just give me a word or a phrase of how you're feeling now, what you might take into the week with you, or if you had any aha moments, any like, oh, I need to, well, like Rayanne was like, oh, dad, that might be a word. Think about dad. So but don't press enter, okay? And when you have written it in the chat, just give me like a thumbs up, and then I'll tell you. Oh, look at that. I have some weird setting on right now. I don't know what it is, but I can do things, right? I do things with my hands and stuff happens, but some of the things that occur, like one day, I don't know what I was doing, genuinely. And you saw me, I talk with my hands all the time. I made balloons come up and I was like, what? I don't even know how to turn it off. All right, beloveds. So when you've got your word or your phrase, give me your thumb. Okay, I have that one. Rayanne.
Yeah, got it.
Good. Oh, there's
Got
my
it.
beautiful. Okay. Good, Diane. Okay, enough of you. Now press go. Really doable. Great. Thank you, Krista. Useful. Oh, appreciate your help. Reassured and encouraging. Good.
Yeah.
I want you to be reassured. I want you to know that this is all very doable. And by the way, prep school is one way to do it. There are many others. And no matter which route you do decide, I really want you to just remember that you have to do it together. Because if you just try and do one piece and then you're going to get stopped and you'll just hit this wall. Okay, my loves? Okay, yay. So
Great.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank you.
I cannot wait to
you.
see you at some point in the future. Thanks a million,
Thank you very
guys.
much.
Thank you.
You're
you.
welcome.
Good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. I love the little hands.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Aw, thank you, Maria. That's so sweet of you.
Very well done. Thank you very much, Krista.
Oh, I'm so glad. Marta, it's so nice to see your face. That's so lovely. Thank
Good
you for
night.
coming. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, Carol. Bye.